Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Three Men of Football. All right, lads.
Hi, Thomas. Simon, how are we?
Hi, lads. How we doing? Back to your normal now, Darren?
Yeah, I couldn't cope with just saying lads.
Darren, what have you got on there? What top have you got on?
Oh, this is my Aston Villa training top, Simon. It's
have you been training with Aston Villa?
Today and yesterday. We had a friendly against West Brom. So they asked me to come along and give my thoughts. But I'm trying to even out the Liverpool love on after the last episode. I'm still not recovering.
Yeah, but don't forget, we don't actually wear Liverpool tops.
I know, but I just got to have the balance right, lads. It's, you know.
Yeah, I see what you're doing there, Daz.
It's the strangest thing in the world. Three lads from Liverpool. We all live a couple of miles from each other. And you support Villa. You know, I could understand Everton.
It's hard, isn't it?
I could understand Tranmere.
Wow.
Aston Villa.
To be fair, mate, the way things are going, Tranmere looks the better option. we could be playing them soon.
All right, so we've got a couple of things to talk about today. We've actually got a special guest coming on later on who we'll talk about after the feedback session. But we wanted to kick off with the feedback session for our Monday podcast as normal. We've changed up the setup on a Friday, but sticking with the normal segments on a Monday, so we can look forward to Thomas's Wall of Hate and yours quiz question, Darren, or whatever you're calling it this week.
The quiz type quiz question.
That one, yeah. Yeah. I can't say it.
Well, have a go live. Come on.
The quiz type question. I don't know. Okay. All right. So I'm going to kick off with comments. So the first one is Lev Yashin, the Black Spider. We did actually talk about him in the last podcast. Greatest goalkeeper ever, and he didn't have the protection keepers have nowadays. I see footage of him on YouTube, and he was fantastic. Only keeper to ever win the Ballon d'Or, and that was from Sean McCusker. I didn't realise that he'd won the Ballon d'Or.
No, I didn't either.
I wonder if Sean was alive then. It was a long time ago.
He sounds about 90, to be honest with you. I don't know if he is.
Yeah.
But actually, his point again about protecting goalkeepers, I think we were trying to make that point in the last podcast about the protection they get now to what they used to have to go through.
It's so different, isn't it? You know, you think about the way people used to ram into goalkeepers. It was a different game, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You can just imagine if Thomas was on the line while that was happening. Bad enough now.
I tell you now, just kick them when they're down. Go right through them.
Yeah. It's your style of football, mate. That is never going to do that. Okay. So comment number 2. My vote will go to Roy Keane. As discussed, I tune in early to have a giggle at his straight talking. I mean, obviously we're laughing at his straight talking. I don't know whether the players are. Certain pundits can get in, and this is his line exactly. Certain pundits can get in the bin and stay there. Owen, Merson, Danny Murphy, utter drivel comes out of their grids on a weekly basis.
Just a quick question. What bin would they go in and what day would they go out?
Literally couldn't be any more scouts. And that was from Paul Bruns, who actually has been working away, come home and has started catching up on the podcasts. He really liked the Pundits podcast, which was good. And then the last comment, which is my favourite of the week, is, who is this Thomas Morris character? Please don't call me arrogant, as what I say is true. I think I am the special one. His performance was not special. It did not make me laugh. And it should make me laugh. Pathetic. From Jay Mourinho. So it sounds like Jose has got wind of your comments, Thomas, and he's not happy at all. He's kicking right off.
He's a weapon.
Next season, he doesn't use a goalkeeper.
Yeah. He's revolutionising football. Do you remember the song that he did about Jose Mourinho with his Technicolor Dreamcoat?
No.
Oh my! You got to find that song. I found it on YouTube the other day. Absolutely wetting myself laughing. Brilliant. It's like from 10 years ago, but really good.
I thought we were going into a musical then. So I got all excited.
Daz is getting excited, yeah.
Football and musicals, Darren's dream.
So we've had loads of feedback this week. They were just 3 that I picked out, particularly like the Mourinho one. And then a couple of shout outs for people who are watching, listening and giving us feedback. Ray Darby, constantly commenting on Facebook, giving us good feedback on the podcasts. Mark Stewart, and we're going to actually speak to his dad later on. And Callum Gill, who is the boyfriend of our niece. And he's given us some really good feedback as well. He's a younger lad, and he's catching up on some of the things, learning some things when we talk about different players from many years gone by. Like Thomas is, Daz, he keeps reminding us that he's younger.
Yeah, he's almost using us like his mentors, isn't he, this Callum?
Yeah. It's similar to Thomas, but actually Callum is younger, whereas Thomas is only a couple of years younger.
I think it's 5, lads. 5. It's massive in the in the scale of things.
Yeah. Keep
but to
rubbing
look
it in, mate.
at us, Thomas, to look at us, I'd say we're all the same age.
I don't know what many you're looking in, Darren, but bloody hell. Hey, anyway, I've had a bit of good news, boys. I've sorted out my contractual dispute, and I'm back on the cell. It's only £7 in Tesco.
Oh, I love it. So that's not a sponsorship, mate. That's not the way it works.
No, I know.
It was meant to be 6.
Okay, so before we get Stevie in, there's a couple of things that we wanted to talk about. So firstly, you mentioned it before, Daz, the Premiership is almost back and teams have started to have friendlies. So what have you read?
Yeah, so Villa had the friendly, I think it was yesterday, behind closed doors, obviously, against West Brom. I think they're going to do it again, by what I've read, because it sounds silly, but they're doing well at the moment in the Championship. So I think with a similar ability. It ended in a 2-2. We went 1-0 down, and then I think we got it up to 2-1, and they scored towards the end to make it 2-2. It's just going to be interesting, I think, what happens next week and how it's going to be. The atmosphere, that first game's vital, especially for Villa. You want to get away with at least a point, if not a win, because a defeat can have because the games are thick and fast. One defeat, the first defeat, it's just going to be so crucial in that relegation battle. But I do think other teams are starting to play behind closed doors now, getting a friendly or two with local clubs. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I think it's good that Villa have played with West Brom as well. Makes sense because they're up the road. They don't have to travel that much. That gives them a decent game. I think you're right as well, Daz. West Brom are a decent side for the Championship. So they're likely to be able to step up and give them a decent game.
Yeah, you're not allowed to travel. I think is it 80 miles maximum they're allowed to travel. So you've got to play someone local anyway. Arsenal played, I think, yesterday. They won 5-0 against Charlton. Charlton, I think they're struggling, aren't they? In the relegation zone in the Championship or First Division. Lee Bowyer's the manager. I think they had one of the young kids scored a hat-trick and Lacazette and Aubameyang got the other two. But I mean, just contact football and getting out and playing is what everyone needs now, isn't it? Just ready, because with it being so close.
Just Thomas, just on that Charlton, wasn't it their striker is not playing or something, who scored all the goals, or he's one of their key members because he might get a transfer to a bigger club at the end of June.
You're right,
really?
That's
So basically, he said he doesn't want to play now till the end of June, and there's about 3 of them who have said similar things because they want to try and get a better club at the end of June. His contract's till June, and he should play. And then after that, that's fine. Gary Neville was talking about how the PFA should make him play to see his contract out.
Yeah.
But then, it's an interesting one. That you can see Lee Bowyer was devastated when he was talking about it.
Well, what happened was he something happened around Christmas, and he was in the transfer market. They were going to sell him, and he was going to go to a couple of big clubs come in for him. I think he scored something like 14 goals. He looks a tidy little player. But he's come out on Sky and done an interview yesterday to say, I've been dropped by clubs. I've had my contracts terminated by clubs in the past. He said, I've hit some form and been playing really well and consistently for the last couple of years. Bigger clubs are looking at, signing me up. I'm not on a massive wage like the Premiership players are. And if I get an injury in these last couple of games with my contract being up, because his contract ended the 1st of June, he said, I can't risk my family and my future when I know that I've got big clubs coming in for me to play for. He said, it is about money and securing my future. And he was dead honest about it. And he said, I hope Charlton don't hate me. I'd love to finish the season. So I was just thinking, why doesn't Charlton offer him a contract? Guarantee his wages for 18 months.
Yeah.
Say, but we'll still sell you. We'll still sell you and let you go on the free. Because if they're that desperate to stay up, it might be worth doing it that way.
Yeah, but it's hard though, isn't it? Because they might be able to make some money out of him. This might work out for them, given what's going on. People are really struggling for money. Teams in the Premier League are struggling, never mind teams that are lower down. I think there's they might play that to their advantage. But I mean, to be fair, you want to keep your best players at the moment, don't you?
Well, there is no advantage for Charlton because his contract's up, so he's free.
But will he go? So he'll go on, but he won't go in a free in January. He will.
Yeah. No, he's going to go on a free. The season's up officially as far as his contract's concerned. If it ran out on the 1st of June, so he's a free agent. He can go to whoever. But because the season's carry on outside of his contract, he's refusing to play in case he gets injured. My suggestion would be, why don't Charlton offer him an 18-month contract with guaranteed money? Because if they stay in the Championship, it's a lot. They've got a better chance with him in the side than not, and still give him his free transfer once the season's finished.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And if he doesn't, if he was to get injured, he knows he's got a year's contract there to get back fit and get playing again next year.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an option anyway.
And the clubs are going to have to make the right decision for themselves. And this will play out, I'm sure, with a lot of players over the next 4 to 5 weeks or so. All right, so let's get to the person who we've got on as a special guest. So the guy we're getting on is Stevie Stewart. We've known him for a long time. I feel like I've known him since I was a kid. So he's a referee, been around football all of his life, been around amateur football and specifically football in Liverpool for many years. We know his sons as well quite well. And he's just one of the nicest people you'll meet in football. Genuine, loves the game, does lots to support the game. And what a referee.
Yeah, I came across Stevie Stewart when I was about, I want to say 17 or 18. And for me, I'm going to say for me already, get that out the way. For me, he's probably the top official, I think, in that I've had the pleasure to be on the pitch with. And what I like about Stevie is that he talks throughout the game to everybody. He knows everyone's name. He tells you if you've messed up. He tells you if you've done something well. And it's just that banter I quite like when I'm playing football. So I think he does that very well. And he controls a lot of difficult games and difficult players because he gets to know them and they know him as well.
Also on a level so I've managed a lot of teams that he's refereed. He deals with, obviously I'm shy and retiring when I'm on the line.
Whatever.
He's very good at letting the line know what he thinks. And, he's not an overly big guy. He's getting on in life a little bit.
Oh, we'll love that.
That's harsh. That's harsh.
He is. He is hard as nails. He takes absolutely no messing. He's straight as an arrow. He's a cracking fella. But you wouldn't mess with him on the footy pitch. You wouldn't try and back chat him or give him any hassle. Quality referee.
Yeah. But I do think it's the respect though that he gives that you get back, and I think that's the difference.
Definitely. All right. Well, let's get him on and see what he's got to say for himself. Hello, Stevie. How we doing, mate?
Pretty good. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you great, mate.
Oh, that's good.
Great to see you, Steve. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Daz, Tom, Simon. Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks
no
for
worries,
coming
mate.
on.
We've been talking about this for ages. When you have your choice of referees and, our closest choices are you or Billy Birch, you win by a country mile, mate.
Out of the 3 votes, you got 4.
Very good.
Yeah. So, Stevie, we've just said some nice things about you before we come on. We didn't want to embarrass you while you were on here, so you can listen to that afterwards and see Tom slagging you off. So
talk about Curly, Larry, and Mo.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. Yeah, that's the way it goes, mate. So, listen, we wanted to get you on because we're going to get people on to talk about their greatest moments. We want to talk to you a little bit more today. We want to get into a conversation about VAR, how it's impacted the game and stuff.
Sure.
But tell us a bit about how you've been involved in the game, how you grew up in the game, and now what you do now.
Okay, I mean, all the way through primary school, and I went to a grammar school, so that was rugby playing grammar school. I've always been involved in sport. Qualified in 1973, back in Belfast, did a 4-year honours degree and became a PE teacher, and taught for 6 years in Belfast, and the teaching career continued when I came across here in 1983. When I was back in Belfast, I was playing rugby, football, basketball and volleyball at a fairly high level, but jack of all trades, master of none, I think is probably the best way of describing it. I can see 3 guys sitting in front of me right now maybe fit that bill as well.
Absolutely.
But it was almost one of those situations by chance where I sort of fell into refereeing. I was refereeing school games on a regular basis, and it had become a bit of a pain in the backside because even the away schools wanted me to referee their games at their schools, and it was then that the bug really began to bite. But I was quite lucky. I've come through that physical education regime, and that sort of stuck by me. And when I came across Liverpool in 1983, I was fortunate enough to begin to work with Liverpool schoolboys and work with some very famous names there. So,
Stevie, do you want to name drop some of them? Because Simon name drops his mate every week.
I think prior to coming on tonight, I was making some very quick notes, and I think the best memory I had really was back in 1987 of bringing the Liverpool schoolboys squad across, along with John Dennis and Paul, and that was the first English football team to go to Belfast in 13 years. Would you believe?
Wow.
And McManaman and Billy Kenny played in that particular team, and it was a fantastic tour. We could not have been lauded and greeted more royally than we were in my hometown of Carrickfergus, where we played Antrim Schools, and in Belfast itself, where we played the Belfast Schools team. Steve McManaman was an absolute star, but curiously, actually, when we played the Belfast Schools team, we were up in East Belfast, and a gentleman called Bob Bishop approached me. I don't know if you know who Bob Bishop was or is. Bob Bishop famously discovered George Best.
Oh, wow.
And Bob had come across. I'd met Bob a few times when I was teaching in Belfast, and he said, "Who's that guy, that centre midfield player?" And it wasn't Steve McManaman, it was Billy Kenny.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, and Billy famously went on to be MOM, I think, in the Derby. And sadly didn't really stick at it long enough. But the tour was also famous for another couple of reasons. One was that Steve McManaman almost killed me. We took him up to the Coates Road, up to Bushmills. They didn't go in, we did, the adults did. But we were at the Carrick-a-Reid rope bridge. Do you know that? Have you heard of the Carrick-a-Reid rope bridge? It's a tiny little rope bridge that joins the mainland with a stack. And I went across, first of all, halfway across, I said to the boys, right, let's go. McManaman was on the far side and he was shaking the rope. And I mean, the air was blue. I thought it was hit the rocks below. And I used language to a pupil that I've never used before or since, I've got to say, because I was really in fear of my life. I wonder if he ever remembers that story, but it certainly was that worried me. So, in a football context, they were two sort of highlights. I was refereeing, but also coaching in those days, and I think of them fondly.
Yeah, those schoolboys days must have been brilliant, because a lot of great players went through those schoolboys in those years, and you must have seen loads of them as well, and then come across a load, because we talked a couple of weeks ago about how the academy system works now and how the system used to work in the past.
Yeah.
How many players just drop out of the system that are real quality footballers, Billy Kenny being a really good example, who doesn't quite meet the expectations. Why do you think that is, Stevie? Do you think that's just there's too many?
Well, certainly the decanting process has become a lot more refined now, to use that sort of as an analogy. And I also worry a great deal because we have boys and girls beginning to play football at an earlier and earlier age. I know, and I've heard this, and I heard it with some disbelief, that kids at the age of 3 and 4 being picked up now and being watched and brought into soccer camps, if that's what the right word is. Yeah. So they're obviously being viewed at that point. Now, I know that kids' cognitive skills and physical skills and motor skills develop in different ways. But even at the age of 3 and 4, people are beginning to, pinpoint them as potential players of the future. But the main point I'm trying to make is, if you're starting playing football at 3 or 4, and we probably all did, but in different ways, by the time you get to 23, you played football for 20 years. And I think for a lot of people, 20 years is too long. Now, people get to the age of 15 and 16, haven't played it 3-4 times a week over a 10, 12, 13, 14-year period. Maybe the word burnout's a bit of a cliche, but it certainly is one that's worth considering. So only the strongest, it's a bit like Darwinian theory, only the ones that can adapt the best and the strongest will actually get through and make it to the top.
Well, you've also got a situation there, Stevie, whereas if they don't make it, then it's no surprise that a lot of them drift away from football as well. So then they're not involved. So some of them you see drifting around the amateur leagues, but others you just don't see at all, because they just can't take it mentally. They've been around the pros or the young pros for years, and then all of a sudden they're thrown to the amateur football. It's totally different, isn't it?
So I think, I think that the pressure put on these kids at a young age is phenomenal. And quite often I see through my school, Stevie, and through my links with secondary schools and clubs, is that I see kids who are 12 and 13 who are promised the earth, and are 14 and 15 who are dropped off. And I just think, I'm not a massive fan of how the academies run these days. I think I said that on another podcast. I think the pressure and the mental well-being of some of these players, clubs have got to do more and to look after them. And we've also taken out the joy of football at a young age. I think we all played it in the street, in the park, jumpers for goalposts, that sort of thing, where it was fun. And I think now it's getting too structured and too much pressure, and they almost want to make it before they've made it. And I think that's a massive issue.
That's a really relevant point. And Tom, I'm sort of looking at you as well, because the development of veterans football now I think it's a blessing in disguise to see guys being prepared to either prolong their playing careers or maybe have dropped out for 5, 6, maybe in some cases 10 years and jumping back into football again by playing vets football for fun. And I use the word fun, advisedly there, because I have seen and I've refereed a number of vets games, and sometimes they're not that much fun, I've got to say. It is great to see that. And there are probably people in the system who have been playing football on and off for the best part of 40, 50 years now, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's enormous pressure on. And it's an oft-used phrase that sometimes that potential lifestyle has been lived through the parents, and the pressures on the kids to really fit into the system. But it's a very fickle business, of course, and lads and girls who have looked world beaters at 14 and 15 suddenly aren't. I could name 3 or 4, which I won't do in this broadcast, but name 3 or 4 who were absolute world beaters when I was refereeing them when they were 12, 13, 14 years of age and just fell off the edge of the earth, really.
Yeah. It can be anything, can't it? It can be a decision from a club to let people go and then feeling totally disenfranchised with football, or parents not getting involved, or parents getting too involved and putting them off. Thomas, you come into it pretty late as well with football because you didn't play growing up.
Yeah.
And to Stevie's point, you're now managing a vets team. When you look at those vets players, and I think we know for our team, generally they're players who've played all their lives at amateur level, isn't it? We've got a few that have played at decent levels, but the majority are all amateur lifers, aren't they?
Yeah, a lot of our lads we've had before all played when we were a really good side about 10 years ago. But what I'm finding is it's so hard to get over 35s, like 15 or 16 for a game, that you're calling upon lads that haven't played for 5 or 6 years and they're interested in coming down, and then they play a couple of games and then the body's packing. So it's quite difficult to have your hardcore that have trained the body over the years and are used to the demands of the game. And as we found this year, we were shocked going from starting in the over 35s to how competitive it was, and playing against the quality of the players that we've come up against. It was immense at times, and some absolutely barnstorming games with quality players.
But if you think about it, Stevie, you look at the players who have been at the top end in places like the County Comp and the real amateur football around Liverpool. The majority of them now are in that league. You've got the Brit, you've got Remica, you've got Abbey Road, all quality teams that have got players from around the biggest teams in the city. In fact, we were talking earlier about a podcast that's just been started locally. It's called From the Off, and it's a guy called Mick Watson. They basically talk about the local amateur game, and they had a lad called Neil Gregson, who was at Bolton, ended up playing in Speke, playing at Waterloo Dock.
Right.
Well, he is a really good example of what is happening. So he was at the pros, didn't get to where he probably should have got to because he was an outstanding player, and then ended up going into the amateur game. And what he said was, it was like doing my YTS again when I went into the amateur game, because all of a sudden you're not protected like you are in the pros. Yeah, it's a great point, isn't it? Because that would put you off as well.
Yep. And of course, you've heard me bang on about this before, that I'm always trying to encourage guys who are coming to the end of their playing careers and take up the whistle and maybe put something back in that way. But that's a daunting step for a number of lads. I mean, I've refereed 6'5" hairy centre halves who've said wouldn't do it for a big gold clock, Stevie, and don't even consider asking me again. So
it's interesting, Steve. We've talked today about future podcasts, and we're looking at referees at youth level, and we're looking at parental involvement at youth level. Yeah. As our new feature, which is 5-minute features, just to make people aware of actually when they're having a go at a referee in the middle of the field, a young lad, that's their career they're trying to make there. And I think parents and players have got to be a bit more protective of these referees in the centre circle, certainly young ones who are just coming through, and I don't think there's enough protection for them.
It's certainly the case. And I will say this as well, because the statistics and data over the last 5 or 6 years, and the FA have been very good about the amount of data that they've managed to produce on that behalf, indicates that it's a very low percentage, a very small percentage of people who actually will overstep the mark, cross the line, to use the phrase. But there's absolutely no doubt at all about the fact that young referees need to go through a process, whether they're boys or girls or they're older guys coming into it for the first time, need to go through that process of making mistakes in those first 2 or 3 games, and then gradually beginning to whittle those down to 1 or 2 mistakes a game, or in my case, 7 or 8, 9, 10 a game.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, we were all about to chip in there, Stevie.
But at least I'm consistent. And allowing those mistakes to be made in a safe environment. Now, the quality of the work done by the volunteers in the game, and the volunteers are the real heroes of amateur football, absolutely no question about that. And the quality of the welfare officers who operate in all clubs now also provides an additional layer of protection. But I've said this before, there is no more character building process that's going to cost you a very small amount of money to go through than a referee course, because it develops your character. How to, you have adults who are in therapy now about learning how to deal with confrontation. Those kind of skills become lifelong skills. If you're able to deal with confrontation in that context, whether it's people on the field to play or off the field to play, then that's a lifelong skill that stays with you forever. So,
but you've got an interesting way of dealing with it, Steve, because so you've refereed me and Daz a number of times. You've also dealt with Thomas on the line, which is an entirely different story. But what we were just talking about before is during the game, you would talk to players as much as you players would talk to each other.
Yeah.
So I'd throw a tackle in, either a bad tackle, a good tackle, or I'd miss an opportunity or something, and you'd be in my ear constantly. And also, every time I'm going past you, I'm hearing you say something to me, and you weren't just doing it to me, you're doing it to everyone.
Simon, can I just jump in and say that's only because you and I never leave the centre circle. That's why.
It's a very good point. It's 15-yard circle, yeah.
Yeah.
But you used to talk all the time, and the hard we played in leagues that were filled with really hard players, people who it was difficult to contain. But you always managed to contain them. I never seen you let a game get out of hand. I never seen players, I'm sure they did have a real go at you, but I never seen it get out of hand. How did you do that in the leagues around Liverpool?
Well, that's really kind of, and curiously, I was talking to our Mark and Jamie before this evening, and I often reflect on when I was refereeing in the county combinations. It was county primes. It became the fixture I used to love was Waterloo Dock versus the Doms versus the Dock. That was the quality fixture, the one that I picked up maybe half a dozen times, and every single one of those games was harder than any semi-pro football that it was involved in, tougher by far. And probably on the day, both of those teams would have hated me. But I think at the end of the day, they probably respected the fact that I did everything I possibly could do to pick up as many names as I could during the course of the game, to give them value for money for the match fee that they got, to make as many accurate decisions as I could, explain as many as I was allowed to, and at the same time being allowed to keep the game moving forward. Not forgetting the fact, at the end of the day, though, it's the referee who comes the week after I'm there is the more important referee. And I will think I've always refereed with that philosophy. But because I'm out there as in the context of what's in between the white lines, the 23rd player, I just want to make sure that they know I'm enjoying myself. Good game, bad game, indifferent performance. I just want them to know I'm enjoying myself. But I think the one thing that stood by me is the ability to pick up players' names or nicknames fairly quickly. And if you personalise the issue, that becomes an easier one to work with. And Darren, I think you and I have had this conversation as well. You don't criticise the person, you criticise the behaviour. If you criticise the person, you're on a hiding to nothing. If you criticise the behaviour, then that becomes slightly easier. And if I use Tom as an example, if Tom's losing his cool on the touchline there,
I never did that, Steve.
Of course you didn't. And I've gone across and I'm having to go with Tom. I'm not going to win that argument, but if I say to Tom, "Hey Tom, do we really need to hear that sort of language, or do we really need to?"
Oh, now you're pulling me down. I never swore.
Yeah, no. Encouraging language, of course. So the point I'm trying to make is it's addressing the behaviour, not the player, is the key to it.
Stevie, can I ask you a question then? Do you think your teacher training and your work in schools helped you do that?
I think it's helped. But I wouldn't say that teaching is necessarily the only profession that prepares you for that. I think I've referred to it before as a vocation. It's not just a hobby, it's a vocation. You know, I know a lot of really good amateur players, probably some semi-pro and pro players, who would make, if they chose to, who would make excellent referees because their communication skills, their interpersonal skills are excellent. You know, you just build into that knowledge and understanding of those of game management, and empathy with players and empathy with coaches. Then you're 3/4 of the way to being, you know, a half decent referee in that context.
Yeah, Thomas, from the line when you're managing and Stevie's refereeing, how are you feeling about that? So when you see him, you know, you turn up to the game because you were never organised enough to know that it was Stevie beforehand, and then you find out that he's refereeing us. How do you feel about that?
I was always really happy. So there was I wouldn't drop any names on here, but there was a couple of referees that literally didn't leave the centre spot, never mind the circle. And they'd be calling offsides from the halfway line, which there's no one. I mean, I've got 20/20 vision. I couldn't call it. I couldn't know whether it was accurate or not. They're just guessing. And a lot of the time, Stevie, when he come along, he was always very, very fair. He spoke to you absolutely superb. So you know where you were before the start of the game. It was, you know, hi Stevie, how you doing? And it'd be a case of, Tom, I don't know messing about off you this week. Last time I had you, you were a little bit excited. All right, Steve, I'll be on my best behaviour. But you knew what was going on. You knew the reason why he's given a decision. A lot of referees, there's a referee in our league. He must be 70 odd, and he swears at you all the way through the game. He calls you all kinds, and he says, "Me and you will have it off the pitch." And I'm thinking, you're joking. I'm not getting battered by a 70-year-old. So yeah, Stevie always brought calm to the game. So when we were going into a tough game, a game where there was something on the line, or we just didn't like each other, the oppositions didn't like each other, you always knew if Stevie turned off, there was a calming influence. So it would be the team that deserved to win at the end of the game would win the game. It wouldn't be on a stupid decision or Stevie losing control of the game, or it'd be down to one side making a mistake or the other side playing better than the other.
Yeah, let's be careful with that though, because if I remember rightly, Stevie Stewart refereed us in that game where I missed a penalty.
Yeah. I'm sure he might have that as his thing. All right, can I just ask you a question? Can I ask you, Steve? You know, like a footballer when you're playing and you go to it, you start the game and things just aren't going well for you, and your touch isn't there today, and you're all over the place, and you get called out businessly for a goal, or you make mistakes and things aren't going right. Does that happen for a referee? Does a referee turn up one day and for whatever they do, they just can't get a decision right, but no, they're making mistakes all the way through?
Without any shadow of a doubt at all. I always sort of reflect on when I was refereeing semi-pro football in an Northern Prem. I was up at Accrington Stanley, and the ball hit me in the first minute, and it hit me again in the 12th minute, and it hit me again in the 30th minute. My bootlaces came undone twice during the course of the game. I gave a penalty to the away team, which on reflection was an overreaction on my part. That's how diplomatic is that?
Oh, well done.
And that's, I won't say it was an overreaction on my part. I think I've had a chance to look at that again. I may have changed my mind. But as I was going off at half time, this old guy gave me an absolute mouthful of abuse. And the two assistants who were with me walking off, who were younger lads from up north, they were up from Lancaster direction. I wondered how I was going to take it. I just said to them, just keep walking, guys. Don't look back. Don't look back. And as soon as I gave them the advice, don't look back, I turned around over my shoulder, and this guy had launched a pork pie at me, which bounced off my head. I thought, I'll win this one. I'll pick it up and I'll bring it into the change. And he picked it up, and he'd taken a bite out of it first before he actually threw it at me. So I had to toss it onto the sideline there. But yeah, there are days when it just doesn't seem to go right. There are days, I've described it when I speak to younger referees. There are days when the sun is on your back, and there are days when the rain is coming in horizontal into your face.
Yeah.
And part of that's about luck as well, but an element of it really is definitely about developing that rapport with players. And even when players are having a bad game, there's an opportunity there to sort of empathize with them. And you know, I work with players. You are a good example of that. I work with players. You can have a good crack with. You can have good banter with as well. I mean, Darren, you've refereed most of my games for me when I've been on the same pitch as you.
I just think if I can help you, Stevie, I will.
Yeah, but not for 19 minutes, Darren. That's the issue. And then another 20 minutes afterwards as well. But yeah, we definitely do. We have stinkers as well. And you know, I'll be the first. I am my biggest critic, I think, and I'll be the first person to hold my hand up. And I've done that during games. I've held my hand up on occasions where I've given an offside, blown with confidence, and then looked across and the right back is 20 yards behind play and he's keeping everybody onside. Now, I've just had to, on one occasion, I sunk to my knees with my hands on my head. I couldn't believe I'd done it. But you've got to be big enough and brave enough to say, I dropped one there. I'm really sorry, guys, you know, and let's all move on. And I think players appreciate that. What they don't appreciate is BS. They don't want you to tell them lies. They don't want you to make things up. They want you to tell it straight. And if it's because you've been a mistake, then be big enough and brave enough to admit that.
Yeah. I think that's something that makes a big difference as well, and that's one of the things that sets you apart. There are a handful of referees who do the same that we've had over the years, but that definitely sets you apart from the majority. Is that you are honest. To Thomas's point, we always know before the game where you stand. You're not going to take no crap, and that's the way it's got to be. I almost liken your style of refereeing to rugby style of refereeing.
Yeah,
much more respect going both ways, and I think once that starts from you, it's really difficult for players to push back on that.
One thing, though, I didn't like, Stevie, is that you ran past me once.
Yeah, that's because it was full time. And it was piddling down probably as well. That's probably why that was. That was probably my warm down. That's what it was. I think.
So I've got one for you, Stevie. So
Go ahead.
You just mentioned a couple of teams in County Comp who were outstanding and were outstanding for years. We've played against them. But if you look back at the teams that you've refereed, who's the one team that's really stood out in terms of quality? You know, you talked about Waterloo Dock and the Doms. Who's really stood out as a team over the years?
That's a really amateur level. Do you mean
amateur level? Yeah, just the County Comps and Gary, that type of level.
The Sunday Business House and stuff like that. Say.
Yeah.
I think I've got to say it's probably Sunday League team Almathag.
Oh,
back in the late 1980s and the early 1990s. They won the National Sunday Cup in, I've got a note here, 1989.
Yeah.
And one of my famous sort of stories is in relation to having refereed the Almathag in the National Sunday Cup. But I think Almathag were absolutely, on their day, outstanding. And when I was refereeing Sunday League football at that point, I was refereeing Almathag versus the Blue Union. And you had 22 players and 6 subs at Sefton Park of the highest quality. And I don't think I've ever refereed a game that I didn't enjoy. There were games that were extremely difficult. I refereed Almathag and Nicosia, and that was a bloodbath, and that was difficult. That was almost like a survival of the fittest, to use that phrase again. But Almathag, I think if I've got to reflect on one, it would probably be them. And of course, they a number of those players played semi-pro, and Rod McDonald, of course, played on pro football, didn't they?
He did.
So that would be it.
Rod McDonald played for my dad for the buses for a couple of years as well, strangely enough. What a player he was. So tell us, you just said you had a story about Almathag when you refereed them in the National Cup.
It was National Sunday Cup quarter-final, and the game was played at Penny Lane, and it was Almathag versus the Lobster. And Gillian, my wife, had gone into labour with Jamie. You all know Jamie, my second son. And it was touch and go, and I was encouraging Gillian every way I could do, even with a cricket bat, to get Jamie popped out so I could get off to the game. And I'd actually gone to the hospital. I'd been sent home, gone back to the hospital at, I think, probably 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was done up with my FA tie, shirt, tie and jacket, etc., ready to go. But I'd also got Kevin Warbrick, God rest his soul, on standby in case I couldn't make it. And Gillian, thankfully, popped Jamie round about up at 6 in the morning, so I stayed for another hour. That was good of me, wasn't it? And,
romance is dead. Romance is dead.
Priorities, I love it.
Yeah, and was able to get down to Penny Lane and refereed, I would say, probably the best game of football I've ever been involved in. Almathag won it 4-3 in extra time. The Lobster were outstanding. Almathag just shaded them on the day itself. I sent off an Almathag player, and I probably should have sent off Eugene Lama instead. But Eugene went on to score the greatest amateur goal I've ever seen. And if he ever picks up this podcast, he'll confirm that. He'll probably take him 20 minutes to talk you through it. But it was like, do you remember the famous Eddie Gray goal where he beats 5 or 6 players on the edge of the box, just inside the box? in the box and then he slots it home. Eugene did exactly that. He beat 3 or 4 players and just very calmly rolled it underneath, and that won the game at 4-3. So Jamie was born, Gillian was fine, thankfully, and I refereed a game of football that I really probably on that day could have said, that's it. It won't get any better, and it didn't really after that. That was
you ended up refereeing us.
Yeah. It was downhill quite quick after that.
After that, yeah. But that was that was some day. It really was.
They were a great team. They were a brilliant team, and their players ended up going off to different teams around the city. But what a quality setup they had as well. Yeah. As you say as well, you were in that league. You had loads of quality teams, but they stood above the rest.
Yeah.
Stevie, can I ask you? Sorry, Si. Can I ask you who do you support, Steve?
I'm a Spurs fan. Tottenham fan.
So a Spurs fan. They had a great side in the '80s. Glenn Hoddle and all those guys. What was your favourite memory of supporting Spurs?
I went to the '91 Cup final, the Forest game. Sat with 2 young lads who were Tottenham fans beside me, and you recall the first tackle from. Well, first of all, we knew that Gascoigne was about 38 feet in the air as he came out of the tunnel to start with. It was absolutely bouncing. And then the first tackle, I always get this mixed up, was the first tackle on Gary Charles, was it? The one that he should have been cautioned for. And then the second tackle.
Yeah, that was on Gary Charles, the first one, which he says now that he definitely should have got a yellow for that.
And that would have calmed him down.
And that would have calmed him down. Yeah. And then the second tackle, obviously, was the damage was done. So that was great to be at that occasion. I see Tottenham when they play in the Northwest. I don't really see them that often in London. I haven't been to the new stadium yet, though friends of mine definitely have done. But I always say I've supported Tottenham through thin and thin. Maybe the glory days are around the corner. Who knows? But I think of all the players that I've watched played, Stevie Perryman, 690 games, I think it was won England. I think he won England B cap actually, but he was what professional football was all about, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Absolutely outstanding professional
quality.
But many great European nights, of course, for Spurs players like Hoddle, David Ginola, and then great players as well, going right back to the 60-61 side. And somebody's got to support them, I suppose.
Yeah, it's got to have been difficult being in the city when we played in the Champions League final.
Well, Mark and Jamie were in the front room with me watching the game, and I've cracked my first can of beer. Just put it down beside me. Match kicks off, and 30 seconds later, I'm trying to down it in one because it was a penalty. I know a lot of Tottenham fans think that it wasn't. It was a penalty. And here's, I'll tell you what. I'll ask you 3 guys a quick quiz question. Well, 2 quick quiz questions on that game. How many? 3 questions first of all. Roughly, how many fouls are
taking over the podcast?
I love it.
How many fouls are there in an average European game? Roughly. How many fouls on average?
18.
Not bad, Tom. Bit higher.
I'd say about 32.
It's lower than that. It's about 23, 24. Okay.
I was just about to say that, Steve.
I knew you were. But here's the quiz question. How many cautions were in that final? How many yellow cards or red cards were in that final?
None.
None at all.
Yeah.
Correct. And the next question is, how many fouls were there in the final?
52.
Nope.
I remember it. I remember the game being a stop-start, but I wouldn't imagine if a normal game is 23, maybe late 30s.
11 fouls.
No.
Really?
Yep.
No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have called that.
Yeah.
It was an awful final.
It was awful.
It was awful. The only great thing about it was we won.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me, Tom. I appreciate that.
All right, so that leads us on well to the next subject, because you just mentioned, Stevie, the fact that it was a penalty. Yeah. And a lot of people didn't think it was a penalty. So one of the things that's happened in football recently in recent years is VAR. We've talked about it for years.
Yeah.
And it's been brought into other sports like rugby. You've also got similar things in cricket and other sports. But it's now coming to football, and it appears that the game is changing. So firstly, what were your thoughts when it was being talked about? I'm sure you've been involved in conversations about when it was coming in. Yeah,
but don't forget now that my involvement in that is I can't use the word minimal. I'm just a spectator really as far as VAR goes, but I'm also someone who enjoys the application of law itself. So my involvement in it is zero. But there are referee society, Liverpool Association of Match Officials, our referee society, we use VAR situations on a regular basis to look at decisions and give views and opinions on that. And here's the key point really, that even when we slow down, if there's 25 of us in a room and we look at a decision, there will not be 25 people agreeing with that decision. Which is it's still a subjective process. But what VAR is going to do, and I'll use the phrase going to do because it's not there yet, it will eradicate most of the doubt about decision making when it's clear. That's a bit of a juxtaposition. When it's clear that a wrong decision has been made, an incorrect decision has been made. So, and that's the purpose behind it. And if you look at the way in which, I'm a big rugby fan, massive rugby fan, the way it's used in rugby, I think we've got a lot to learn from that. People say it's a start game anyway, which is true. But I think the way in which it's actually been introduced and the way in which it's used effectively has taken that element of doubt out of spectators' minds as well as players and coaches' minds. So it's a work in progress, and people can be and have been extremely critical of decisions that look strange because they don't look as if they're accurately put across. But I'd ask people to be patient. I'd just ask people to be patient and allow the FA and PGMOL to work with VAR and just make it better and better and better.
Thomas, what's your take? Because I know you've got some strong feelings on this.
I absolutely love VAR, if I'm being honest. I love the fact that if you're offside, you're offside. There's no clearer. It's dead. The argument's dead. You're either offside or you're not. What I don't like is how they present it to the public on the telly. They present it wrong. They look like they're moving the line to adjust it. It's getting adjusted in a way that it looks like they're adjusting the line so that they call the offside because they don't want a certain side to win, or the TV studios are doing it so it looks a bit off. The lines that sometimes don't look as if they're straight. I don't like that. I also don't like the fact that, you can be off for a shoulder blade. You shouldn't be offside for that. It should be, are you offside? Are you not? But other than that, I think it's brilliant.
But isn't that back to the rule, Stevie? And you know this better than we do. That's about the rule. It's not about VAR, is it? Because you probably wouldn't have seen that, and that doesn't come into play in a normal game because you're not really worried about the fact that an inch of someone's shoulder is offside. You're making a call based on what you can see at the time. Whereas when you've got VAR, the rule is if a part of your body that you can score with is ahead of the last defender, then that's offside, isn't it?
That's correct. Yeah.
So Steve, I want to just bring in the phrase that they all use is clear and obvious.
Yeah.
So my take is, if you're having to get VAR out to go to the offside and it's a millimetre, that's not clear and obvious, in my opinion.
Sorry, Darren.
Go on. And I think that's a difficulty. I think it's still VAR. I quite like. I think how it's been introduced is not quite there, but I think we're getting there. I like VAR. I think it's still interpretation is down to human interpretation of that. I don't know.
No, you're right. I used the word being subjective before, and I think there's still a large element of subjectivity in that. Even if the four of us watch a certain incident, I'll guarantee you we'll have potentially 2v2 on whether or not that decision was correct. The phrase is actually clear and obvious error, so it falls down whether or not a clear and obvious error has actually occurred, and the initiation of a VAR request can only come from the referee. The VAR officials and the other match officials can only recommend or suggest that, but the actual decision to make that comes from the referee. The other thing as well, which I had some discussion on this during the course of the season, there was a view which I'd heard on a number of occasions, and that was the pro clubs themselves were not happy about referees going across to look at a monitor, because that was quite. It was the done thing really on the continent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was a view that the pro clubs weren't really comfortable with referees going to do that. Now I've got a view that that's going to change, and which will give the referee a little bit more ownership of whether or not he or she has made a clear and obvious error. But at the end of the day, even if you if you slow things down, sometimes they actually look much worse. So you get a distorted view.
Yeah, of course.
So the issue of real time is another important factor too.
Especially with tackles. So you see a tackle in real time, it doesn't look that bad. You slow it down, potentially it looks worse. Yeah. And I think, so the bit that maybe is a little bit confusing, and I find confusing at times, and you've just cleared some of it up, it can only be triggered by the referee.
Initiated by the referee. Yeah, the
Initiate- so
VAR can give a viewpoint, can give a recommendation.
Okay, all right.
The actual initiation of VAR itself. It's a bit like Darren and I driving in a car. Darren's driving, I'm riding shotgun, and Darren says, "I think we should turn left here," and I say, "No, we'll go straight on to the next left after that." You know, I initiate that process.
Yeah,
I can take recommendation from what Darren would say.
So, Stevie, how far back are they allowed to go? So we've been in some cases where they've took it back maybe a minute in play or a minute and a half in play. At what point does the phase end and the phase begins?
Well, the key point really is around 4 issues. I'll just make a quick note on it. The key issue is about whether it's a goal or not a goal. Yeah. And obviously, an element of that is Hawkeye. It's the goal line technology that's used for that. The award of a penalty or the negation of a penalty. So a goal, no goal, penalty, no penalty. A direct red card, but not for a second yellow card or a caution, which would result in a second yellow card, therefore red card. And mistaken identity. Those are the 4 key areas that are actually to be used. But the other one that's in there, that's sort of implicit, is that if let's just for argument's sake, let's just use Simon and Tom. Something happens in the middle of the park, and Simon punches Tom behind my back.
Yeah, I can see that happening.
With probably great justification. I'll put that in myself. But if play proceeds, even after a goal potentially could be scored, the incident could be brought back to that incident because it would obviously influence the build-up to play itself. But more importantly, because it's an act of violent conduct. So spitting, biting, punching, headbutting, kicking with excessive force, etc. So is there a time span on it? There's not. In actual fact, the VIR regulations in this year's law amendments speak specifically about there's no time limit on how long it takes to actually, I know, Tom, you'll probably get a bit wound up. There's no time limit on this. It's all about the accuracy of the decision itself. So the key issue is about making sure the decision is correct, not how long it takes to get to that decision.
But I guess that makes sense, doesn't it? And Thomas, you and I looked at one yesterday, didn't we? Which was the Liverpool Man City, was it?
Yeah.
And the foul happened, I mean, it's got to be 60 seconds beforehand.
It was Man United.
Oh, Man United, Liverpool, Man United. And Man United go down the other end and scored a really good goal. But the foul had happened up the other end, maybe 60, 70 seconds before. And I think in that situation, Klopp is going absolutely mad on the line, and they've gone down the other end and scored a great goal, and the goal was given in the end. But then you get others where the same thing will happen, and they'll bring it back and they'll pull it for the foul that may not have looked as bad. And I think that's back to what you were saying, Stevie. It's still subjective. It's still about your perspective on whatever you see, whether it be the video on VAR, whether it be a whisper in the ear, or whether it be you seeing it live. You're the person who's still got to make the decision.
Absolutely, and it says that the referee must always be the person that makes the decision, and the referee is not permitted to make no decision on that. They have to have made a decision before the reference can be made through to VAR, and use VAR as the process that actually arrives at that decision itself. Because
that's the other bit that's a little bit confusing as well, is sometimes things will happen and you're wondering whether VAR's going to be triggered or not, and VAR's not triggered. And then again, I don't think there's been a massive amount of clarity around who triggers that. And then the players are going mad because VAR hasn't been triggered, then they go after the referee.
Yeah. What we have to work on is how it's presented, how it's packaged and presented, that it makes a key element of the game itself. And again, if you look at NFL, the way in which it's done in America in that context, it becomes part and parcel of the game. And and I said to a pal of mine recently, I mean, sometimes it's longer to wait at the bar for a pint before a game than it is to get a VAR decision during the game itself. So this swings and roundabouts to some degree. But I think what we all want at the end of the day is something that is effective, it's efficient, it's pretty quick, and it gets the right decision, whether it's for your team or it's against your team, as long as you know it's the right decision. So,
Stevie, I really liked VAR when it was initially introduced in the World Cup. I think what World Cup it was, I don't know. But the first number of games, there was penalties left, right and centre. There was bookings. There was all kinds. What really frustrates me now is the referees and VAR in the Premiership don't pick up on anything that goes on a set piece, a corner, a free kick, anything that comes into the box. There is absolutely blatant fouls. I mean, near assaults, and they just let go. and they'll just play on. The referee will shout play on. Surely, we're talking double hands, shirt off, kecks nearly by their ankles. It's what are they watching? Or why aren't they bringing it back?
You'll be able to tell from my reluctance to answer that question that I'll probably have to agree with you, because I have seen carnage at corner kicks, particularly.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at where the match official is positioned, and these guys work extremely hard on positioning and best angles, and they're on the move when the corner kick is taken, and they're being coached continually into getting good angles and good views on things. I'm at a loss as to why there are not more penalty kicks or free kicks given in the penalty area at corners, particularly. I won't go through the whole gamut of all set pieces, but corner kicks particularly, there still seems to be, or certainly last season, what there was of it, seems to have been a high degree of manhandling going on at corner kicks. However, there was a directive during the course of the season to referees that said, look, you need to get a grip of this and at least go down the route of saying, I'm standing 5 yards away, keep your hands off him, keep your hands down. And even amateur referees, I know that our Mark will use this phrase, hands down or hands off, etc. It's just a warning thing. I use a bit of I shouldn't really say this. I know there's only the 4 of us watching this, and probably 4 of us watching this at the end of the day.
It's us 4, my dad and size.
Right. So I'll use a phrase like, get your hands off him. Now, if I'm saying that to 16 players in a penalty box, maybe 1 or 2 of them were thinking, how can he see that? And might not be persuaded. So might be persuaded to take their hands down. It's just before the kick is taken, I'm just making sure they know that I'm watching. I'm at the back of the shop. Get your hands off him, and I don't even use a name. I'll just maybe use that phrase, and I've maybe blown it now. So that
doesn't get to anyone.
Stevie, can I ask you a question? How would you feel? I know in rugby, the refs are mic'd up. How would you feel about that if it came in?
Well, the conversation that I've had with a number of colleagues over the last couple of weeks have been about the return of the Premier League. I watched. I'm gonna I did French, German, and Spanish for A level. Okay, so my French is pretty good. My Spanish is okay. My German's a bit rusty, I've got to say, but I can certainly pick up quite a few swear words in the Bundesliga when those games have been televised. And what I'm wondering is what it's going to sound like when we've got that, broadcast nationally from Premier League games. Now, I know that players have been advised to be mindful of the fact that language would be picked up. And I think that referees have also been advised to be, I'll use the phrase again, empathetic and maybe try and control and manage that situation. I personally would love to see referees mic'd up. That's a personal view. And again, going back to the rugby analogy, if you listen to Nigel Owens speak to players,
brilliant.
He comes across a little bit too authoritarian sometimes, but he also has a sense of humour that diffuses situations too. And he talks common sense, and there'd be nothing wrong with players or spectators or, armchair spectators gaining a little bit more of insight into the game itself by hearing referees give decisions or explain decisions that enhance the quality of the enjoyment of the game itself. Whether you agree with the decision or not is irrelevant. The fact that the referees give an opinion on that particular decision is surely got to be a good thing.
Yeah, I totally agree, Steve. I think it's something that we need to look at to bring in. And I also think then the players have to take responsibility in how they approach the referee. And I think that might help with other things on the field.
Yeah, definitely.
It certainly will. And at the end of the day, that influences the lads and girls who are playing, who are, coming through the ages of 8, 9, 10, through into their teens as well. It will definitely influence them. So
Stevie, what are you doing now? How involved are you in football now? So you're still refereeing, but I know you're doing other stuff as well.
I'm pretty much semi-retired now. I've had great years at Lancs FA and Cheshire FA. Obviously, still work when I'm able to, and for Liverpool County FA, do bits and pieces there. But the main thing that I do, I look forward. People do sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I referee on a Saturday afternoon. That's my fix. I absolutely love that. So, and I am missing it desperately. I've been building bird boxes here. We've been, you guys know what I've been doing this afternoon, don't you?
Yeah, I'm glad the Conservatory's finished painting. The Conservatory.
I've been doing Sudoku as well. Would you believe? I think I'm going to get a black belt in Sudoku very, very soon. The way it's going. So I'm doing all sorts of things like. But I certainly I certainly miss the crack on a Saturday. And as soon as we can get back out there and blow a whistle and do 90 minutes from the centre circle, then the better for all concerned. I certainly miss it, and I think society at large has missed it too. So
I agree, mate. In every way, the professional game and the amateur game, when you don't play, you don't realise how much you rely on the football on a Saturday until you haven't got it. And now when you haven't got it, you know, your week just doesn't feel the same. We got out and kicked the ball about last weekend, and it was fantastic. It was like you had a bit of freedom. There's 3 of us kicking the ball around the field. It's not, you know, you're not really doing anything, but it's just feeling like it's getting a little bit more normal again.
We couldn't move for 2 days, Steve, but it was great while we were doing it.
Yeah, Jamie was down training with Cheshire Lions. They were doing 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock. And they were doing some really tough beasting sessions, and he struggled for a couple of days after those sessions themselves. But Simon, can I just come back on a point you just made there as well? Actually, one of the things that probably don't do it as much now, but I certainly did it when I was refereeing Sunday League football. I was always happy to go back for a pint with a team, whether they were in Highton or Speke or Kirby or in the middle of town or wherever else. Go back for a pint after a game, win, lose or draw. And on a Saturday, and I can't really speak about Sundays because I don't referee Sunday football anymore, but on a Saturday now, there are fewer clubs now that appear to go back to the pub afterwards for a couple of beers. And for me, when I played, and certainly when I refereed in the early days, it was always about going back for a beer afterwards. And I think that social element is something that needs to be brought back into it again, because at the level at which we're refereeing and playing now, it is about the social side. It is about the wellness and well-being. It is about mental resilience. It is about those kind of things. And I've certainly missed that. And that's probably one of my greatest fears, that if we get too far into this pandemic and it doesn't really clear up, then, you know, we're losing ties with other people. Zoom, TV, broadcasts, box sets, all those things obviously keep us on an even keel, but that physical contact with other people and the ability to shake hands with somebody or say well done and go for a beer afterwards, that will always be the highlight of my week for any amateur players.
It's spot on, and you're right to call that out as well, because that has changed over time. You'll be happy to hear that we always go back to the pub after the game still to talk about how useless we were.
Or the ref was.
Never me though, Steve. Never me. It's always their fault.
Yeah.
All right, so listen, Steve, before we let you go, tell us a bit about how the lads are getting on.
Mark and Jamie.
Yeah.
Mark should have been married next month.
Oh, really?
Knowsley Hall, that's been kiboshed, obviously, but it has been put back to June of next year. Mark's refereeing futsal, and he got in. He was up at level 3 and got a really bad calf tear and never recovered from it. And Stevie Brand and a few other guys brought him into the setup with futsal, and that's gone from strength to strength. He's loving that. He referees, 5-a-side, 6-a-side football indoors, even if it's raining and snowing. He's still nice and warm, so that was a good move. Jamie's working hard. He's still working at Hollyoaks and Coronation Street. Coaches in America in the summertime. And he's come through a bit of an injury-plagued season as well, but he's enjoying that. So he's getting himself back up to full fitness. So
yeah,
it's a bit of luck.
Stevie, your 2 lads are a credit to you. We know them well. They're great lads. I see Mark now and again in the gym, and he tells me how poor I always am. So it's always nice to hear that. But your 2 lads are great, and the whole family, very supportive of local football and things around the city. And I think I speak for Simon and Thomas and say, thanks for all those memories over the years that you've given us. Particularly, the encouragement you've given to this podcast and other things that we've tried to do over the years.
Pleasure.
Yeah, I'll just add my little bit to that, Stevie. You've refereed me for as long as I said. It feels like I've known you since I was a baby. But
I think I've refereed you, and you played when we both had hair.
Yeah, so, yeah, that was many years ago. Wow. But I always remember when I asked Thomas before how he felt when he turns up and you're there. I know how I feel, and it's how we describe it. I feel like we're safe. We're going to be looked after. We're going to be protected. It's going to be a quality game. The right team are going to win it, the best team on the day, because you're a quality referee, you're a good man, and you're always welcome to come for a beer with us after the game, mate.
Okay, Simon, don't make rash decisions, Simon. I don't think we need...
I'm going to go the other way. Remember that semi-final you robbed us, Steve?
I do.
The penalty in the last minute, you absolutely killed me there.
I've looked at that a few times now.
Jay Hargreaves was viciously assaulted. Oh my God.
Swings and roundabouts, though, Tom. I mean, what you don't get one day, you'll get the next day. That's for sure. Yeah. That's a good example of. Yeah. There are occasions where you want to go back and relive it and replay it, but sadly you can't.
All right, mates. We appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.
This has been absolutely fantastic. We'll definitely have you on again. Number one guest. Thank you very much, mate. I hope you've
Can I
enjoyed
just
it.
say before I go, guys, thanks very much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. If there's anything at any other point during the course of whatever is left of this season or the start of next season, you ever want me to pop back in, I'd be more than happy to do so. And more importantly, well, the work that you three guys are doing, this podcast is extremely enjoyable. A lot of guys are talking about it. A lot of guys, when I say guys, generically guys and girls are talking about it. And keep it going from strength to strength. Keep being inventive and keep bringing new subject matter in and keep up the great work.
Brilliant.
Cheers,
Thanks,
Steve.
Steve.
Much.
Cheers, mate. Speak to you soon.
I'll see you in the
Speak to you
pub
soon.
eventually.
Yeah.
Absolutely, mate.
Hopefully
See you soon.
Cheers.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Fantastic.
that
So
was
now
cool.
we can be more nice about it. What a genuine man he is.
Yeah, he's lovely.
Just
I don't like him, to be honest with you. I just,
now we can be honest. He's not here. No, he's. I remember what I said. You know, I can remember in refereeing us when we were really young, and I don't think I really knew what a good referee was at that stage. I think I was too young. I look back now, and he was amazing. He was fantastic. And you talked about it, Daz, the way he would talk you through the game. That makes a big difference. He's also got a way of giving you a little bit of confidence as well, which I really like. I think he's very unique in the way he referees. I haven't met many referees who are as good at him as relating to the players.
Yeah, I also liked when we were at the Zavs for many years, and wherever Stevie was refereeing in Liverpool, he would always, after going for a drink with the opposition, would always call into the Zavs to have a beer on his way home. Now, he'd always come up to every team that was in the pub and speak to every one of the managers. We had 5 teams at the time, and he'd come up to every manager. How'd you get on? Who did you have refereeing? How did they do? He was always concerned, always asking about your welfare. He was always asking about your players. He knew every player that played for you. Just a quality guy.
Yeah. And Darren, you're about his age as well, aren't you?
very similar, yeah. I know we're about as quick as each other now. He moves faster than me.
He looks really healthy as well. And you're right what you're saying, Daz. His family are fantastic. His lads are quality lads. They love the football. They've been watching the podcast and giving us feedback.
I'm the one player that made Jamie look good.
Well, Jamie played for us, didn't he, Si?
Yeah, he did.
Played in goal for us
Yeah.
on a number of occasions. Good
Decent
lad.
keeper.
Yeah.
All right, so we get through the part of the episode that we enjoyed most. Now we've got to listen to Thomas rant about someone or other in the Thomas Morris Wall of Hate. So, Thomas, who are you mostly hating this week?
Oh, do you know what? It was just by luck I had this one in the bag. I've got an absolute cracker. Fits in perfectly with what we've talked about today. So, I've got a person. He's probably the most talked about person in every game that he plays. He's also Alex Ferguson's greatest ally and probably best ever signing. This week, I'm really hating Howard Webb.
Oh, yeah.
So Howard Webb refereed all the major cup games, the League Cup final, the FA Cup final. And he was the guy for the big Premiership game. You know, Liverpool, Man United. He always got them, didn't he? He also wound up the most amount of players I've ever seen on any football pitch in any division. He was an absolute helmet, honestly. So he was always the centre of controversy. The 2007 League Cup final, he sent off 3 players. Now, what people don't, they look and go, 3 players sent off in a cup final has never happened before. No, he'd wound them up that much. They ended up having a fight in the centre circle all around them. I'm sure they were trying to hit him. Honestly, absolute weapon. So, you know, he's that very, very famous game, the Spurs Man United, where Spurs were 2-0 up at half time, and Man United came back to win. Howard Webb got sacked for a week. Well, he got suspended. The absolute blade. He got caught out for giving a penalty, which the fella just fell over in the box. There was no one near him. He blew up for a penalty. Ferguson's mate, the magic watch went off. Ferguson had pressed his button. Penalty. So he got suspended for a week. So that was that. Man United went on to win 5-2. So
Yeah, well, I mean, if you say they won 5-2, surely that goal didn't make that much of a difference.
They were 2-0 down. That girl got the comeback on its way. So we done the World Cup final. I don't know how he got the World Cup final because he was useless. But he booked 14 players. 14 players and sent off Johnny Eitinger. But what he did miss was one of my heroes and one of an absolute Liverpool legend. Xabi Alonso was absolutely nearly decapitated by Nigel de Jong. And he gave him a yellow card. What are you doing? So then another absolute Liverpool legend, Ryan Babel, he got fined £50,000 for putting on Twitter Howard Webb in a Man United shirt after he'd give a penalty and sent Gerrard off in a game against the Manx. Are you having an absolute giraffe? He's an absolute weapon. So for hating Liverpool, for kissing Alex Ferguson's ass for all them years and being an absolute weapon, Howard Webb is going on my wall of hate.
The Alonso decapitation, that was absolutely brilliant. How did he get a yellow card for that?
I've got no idea.
He must have left his red at home.
Yeah, that was bad though. It was a really, I mean, he took him, it was like a karate kick, wasn't it?
It certainly was.
But isn't De Jong a martial arts expert or something as well?
Yeah, he used all his strength that day, Dan.
Yeah.
That's even Dan.
Do you call me Dan?
Sorry, spent too much time with the lads today. All right, so that was a good one. I like that, Tom. And it's good that, it's topical. We've got a referee on now. You've slagged off a referee. Stevie will be proud of you.
Yeah.
I wonder if he likes him.
I don't know, but I notice all the wall of hate all come down to what's happened to Liverpool and Liverpool players.
Yeah.
Well, Darren, I wouldn't say I'm biased in any way, but he didn't like Liverpool, did he?
Bitter, biased, whatever you want to call it.
Lovely, really.
All right, Daz, let's bring us back down to earth with the, whatever you're calling it this week, quiz question.
The quizzy quiz type quiz question.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say that when you're drunk. So, well done to those guys who have been having a go on the Facebook page and things about the quizzy quiz type question. This week is the Who Am I? So this person's won the UEFA Cup and the UEFA Super Cup. He made his English professional debut against Bradford City. He captained his Premier League team. After a spell in the Premier League, he returned to the club he started his career with, and he scored 31 goals in the Premier League. Who am I?
I know who it is.
Of course you do. You say that every week. 31 goals, got to be a centre-half.
I've never scored 31 goals, and I've been playing football for 39 years.
Okay, all right. Well, let's leave it to the crowds of people that we have on the Facebook page. They seem to be doing well with these ones, Dad.
Yeah, they had a good goal once a day we put up, so
excellent. All right, so I loved that episode. It was brilliant. I think Stevie's did a great job there. Really, really good content. Hopefully it helps people understand a bit more about VAR as well. I definitely learned a bit from him there. So Thomas, final thoughts before we go?
My final thoughts is I could never be a referee.
I tell you what, Stevie was making a play for it there, wasn't he?
Obviously looking at Thomas on that, not me and you.
Yeah. But what he also said was, you can learn conversational skills and all that. I don't need to learn living with Rachel. I'm a master.
All right, Daz, how about you? Final thought before we go?
I think it's great that we got Stevie on as a referee and someone who's been doing it for a number of years. I think it was an interesting discussion about VAR, and I think it will get better as we move forward. And I just hope people just, don't always jump on the VAR bandwagon when something's happened. It's obviously down to the referee, and we need to understand that.
Yeah. I think he did a great job. And I think also we could bring people onto the podcast, but with him, you get some real value out of it as well, because he knows football really well. He knows us really well. And the refereeing side of it gives us a unique perspective. And another fan who supports someone other than Liverpool, which is
always good.
Yeah. So a couple of shout outs before we go. People who are actually giving us loads of feedback on the Facebook. Please carry on. Please give us that feedback. Go onto the website at www.3menandfootball.com. You can register there. We'll keep you up to date with what's going on. We're also posting the latest videos as well. So talk to us on there. And then I mentioned earlier that the Straight from the Off podcast, it is Mick Watson. I keep getting his name mixed up, but that's definitely worth a listen. Great, they talk about amateur football. We'll do a bit more of that coming up, and we'll probably do a bit of that in the 5-minute features, which we released this week, which have been well received, and we'll keep them coming. So we'll see you all on the next one. Thanks, lads.
Thanks very much, guys. See you later.
See you later.